Hi, good afternoon. I've noticed a lot of people asking about tweens in Godot 4.4, so I decided to do a short video on how to use tweens. First of all, what is a tween? A tween comes from the word in between and is a way to smoothly animate a property from one value to another value over time. For example, moving a character from one point to the other, like x equal to 0 to x equal to 200 over a certain amount of time. 1 second, 2 seconds, whatever you like. Also, you can do other things like fade out a sprite's opacity. You can rotate an object smoothly. Basically, instead of instantly changing values, a tween interpolates or fills in the in-between frames. So if you're going from x equals 0 to x equal 200, it's going to gradually move it across the screen over the amount of time that you specify. I myself use tweens to make the intro and outro video for Nodemancer YouTube, as you can see in the little insert video. So let's get right into it. Let's switch to a 2D scene. Create a node 2D and let's give it a descriptive name. For example, tween scene. Enter, sorry. And let's just save that, save it as is. And I'm just going to drag the icon across here. We're going to use this icon to do some tweening. When you drag it across, it's basically a sprite 2D. If you look at the inspector here, it's a sprite 2D. Let's click the tween scene and add a script. Leave everything as is. We're not going to be using process in this case because tweens don't need process. They run automatically. We'll just do everything in a ready function or create a new function if we like. To start off, to create a tween, let's delete this pass. You simply make a variable and give it any name you like. I'll just call mine tween, and it's equal to create tween. And that's it, you just created a tween. Now you have to add movement in the tween. So let's start off with something simple. Let's say we already have the tween created, so we're going to use the name tween. And we're going to tween a property. Let's say, if you look at the prompt, you have to add the object, what property you're going to change, your final value, and the duration in seconds. So let's begin. We're going to tween the icon. So let's add that in. And the property we want to tween, let's start off with something like position. We have to put it in open close quotation marks and type in position. Now you can get these names. Let me just minimize this. If we go back to the 2D scene, you can get these names by clicking the item that we want to tween. And for example, you can tween almost anything. You can tween the texture. So you can use a property texture in open and closed quotation. You could tween the offset, which one of the offset properties you want to change. Different things. We are going to do the transform position. So if you look here, you see property position. So we're using position in the code. We have other things like rotation and scale. We'll get to some of these. Let me just go back to the script and maximize this. So we have position. We need a final variant. It is where it is right now. I did not specify any specific spot. I just dragged it to the center of the screen, as you see in the 2D screen here, in the center of the viewport. It may not be exactly in the center, but I'm just going to leave it as is, and we're going to let's just move it to somewhere else. Remember, positions are vector 2. So let's type in vector 2 and let's give it a new position. Let's just say 200 by 200. That's the XY coordinates, as you can see here. And now it's going to ask for a duration, and let's just give it like 2 seconds. And that's it. We have a tween here. Let's just save that, Control S, and run it. And you'll see the icon moving to some position. And it works. We can also add another tween. Let's say we want to tween another property of the icon, and let's say in this case we want to tween the scale. So let's type in scale. Remember, you can get these property names by going back into the inspector and hovering over the name in the inspector. And this is also a vector 2. Let's scale it up to, let's say, twice the size, which is right now is vector 2 1 1, but we can scale it up to 2 2. If you can't remember these things, you can always go back into the documentation and look up units to use for position and scale. But scale is also a vector because you can scale the x and y size, as you can see here, separately. But we just wanted to scale uniformly for now and give it a time again. Let's give it a 2 seconds as well. Now I want you to notice here, when we add tweens one above the next, what happens is the first tween runs, and when that is done, the second tween runs. And if there's a third one, the third one runs. Let me just show you what I mean. So as you can see, it moves the position and then it scales. If you want to run these both at the same time, we can use something called tween dot, my typing is terrible, dot set parallel, and set this to true. So all the tweens that fall below this, let's give it a little space here, will run at the same time. So you notice while it's moving in position, it's actually scaling as well at the same time. Alternatively, let's just comment this out. Alternatively, we can also do tween dot parallel for each of the values, each of the tweens that we want to run in parallel with each other. And it does the same thing, but only the tweens that have the parallel method added in will run in parallel. Let me show you. It works the same way for now. And just to drive this point home, let's just add another tween. But we're not going to add parallel to it this time. I'm just going to change the tween property. Of course, the same things apply. You have to put the object, what we're going to tween. In this case, I just want to, let me just put a fade out. We're going to use the modulate property for that. Let me just show you what modulate is. Modulate is basically under visibility in the canvas item. In modulate you can change colors, RGB, and A. We're going to drop the A from 1 to 0. Let's widen this back. So we're going to change the modulate. And to change the alpha in modulate alone, we use colon A. We're going to change this to a value of 0.0. And let's run that over 1 second. So now what we expect to happen, these two first tweens are running in parallel, and when those are done, then the modulate tween is supposed to run. So let's see if that works as is. I just did this so that we can understand that using the tween parallel causes all that use the parallel method to run in parallel, but what does not have the parallel method with it, as in the modulate tween that we did here, it's not going to run in parallel. It's going to run after, in whichever order it is stated in this setup. It moves, it gets bigger at the same time, and fades out or disappears after it reaches its final position and scale. I also want to mention that you can change the type of the transition on the tween by, at the end of the tween property, you can type set underscore trans, and these are the different ways you can change how the transition is. Right now it is set to linear by default, but we can change how it transitions by using something else. Let's try, let's say for the position, let's do elastic. That gives it a nice little look. Let's try this. Notice the movement, the position movement that is, it's not as linear as it was before. There's a sort of stretch and then bounce effect, which we also have a bounce effect if you want to use bounce instead, but it's a little different from elastic if you want to try bounce. Let's see how that looks. So bounce is all through the movement, but elastic is more like if you pull a spring and it springs back. What we just did there was change the transition types. We can also change the ease type. We can type set ease. You can change the in and out ease type. For example, if we use in, it slows the start of the transition. If we type out, it slows the end of the transition. If we type both in and out, it eases when the transition starts and ends. Let's try one of those. Let's use one of the suggestions here. Let's use the in out and let's see how that works. This is only for the position. I should take off that bounce because it's not allowing us to see the easing. So let's put back elastic. Elastic was actually nice. I don't know how easy it is for you to see this, but the transition in and out will slow it down when using set ease. We can just try one alone to see if we can see the difference. So it's a slow movement from the position, and at the end it moves quickly. So let's just change it back. Control V. Control Z. Let's try it again. So I don't know if you notice how quickly and how slow it moves. I should end this tutorial here, but I just want to add a little extra. We can also tween callback. Let me go down a bit and add a new function. Now callback is for calling a function. So I'm going to just create a function quickly here. And let's give it a name, my function. I don't know what else to call it for now. Function, open, close. Let's just make it print. Just something simple. And let's say finished. So this is going to print finished in the editor. When we're done, let's save this. But we have to call this function. So what we can do here is we can add tween. We're going to add the callback to tween. Tween callback. And we're going to call back this function, my function, when all these other tweens are finished. And it's supposed to print finished in the editor. Let's save this and play. And there's an error. Oh, I see where. We just have to call the name of the function, not the full function. Control save. Let's run this again. So if you notice, and at the bottom here, as soon as it's done, finish comes up. So that's how you do a tween callback. Tween callbacks can be great for like chaining or looping. Tweens, for example, if I want to create like a bounce Tween. I'm just going to create a function called bounce quickly here. Okay, so I created a bounce function which calls itself. Basically what it does, it moves from wherever it is to 200 then back, and it calls itself again, so it does the same thing over and over. Let's just and let's just call bounce alone and see how this runs. So as you can see, because of the bounce function that we created in the back here, the item bounces back and forth between 0 and 200. What happened initially when we started, as you can see here, is we placed the item at this point here, but it had to move to the 200 and then 0, because that's what we specified, 200 and then 0. I just want to mention, you can use Tweens for a lot of things like UI animation, button hover effects, fade in, fade out, slide menus, game effects, shaking, scaling up enemies, animating pickups, just basically polishing movements, transitions. But there's something else called the AnimationPlayer that you can also use to create animations. But basically AnimationPlayer is for more complex movements. There are use case scenarios that you can use one over the other. I'll try to put up a little GIF with some information on it. But basically you can use Tween. Tweens are usually for code movements, on the fly movements, and AnimationPlayer you use for animations that are set animations, usually long animations like boss intro in a scene, things like that. But I just want to mention it here that a Tween is not the only way to animate things around the screen. You also have the AnimationPlayer. I hope this tutorial was helpful, and shoot me a comment if you want to hear about anything else specific related to this, and I'll see you in the next one.